Yeah, and certainly when I was sitting my exams as a doctor in training, I had no idea that I had any kind of authority on this. I just surrendered to whatever emotion I had, and it was not effective, and it was an uphill battle, and I got through it. But I know there is a better way.
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Becc.
And I am Kristeen Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Dr. Becc is a mindset coach and medical doctor who specialises in liberating driven professional women from the limitations of perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and people pleasing. She's basically the cheat code for getting out of your own way, showing up authentically, and living a life you're proud of.
And Kristeen is a medical educator and nephrologist who creates resources for doctors in training that I truly think are an unfair advantage. She makes complex topics super simple and takes the pain and uncertainty out of passing your medical exams. Kristeen and I connected a few years ago via our online platforms, and over the years we've discussed countless highs, lows, and in-betweens of doctor life. And in doing so, we've experienced firsthand the power of vulnerable conversations to show us where we're getting in our own way and underestimating our capacity.
So we want you to be part of the conversation and experience these same results. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong? The podcast for doctors by doctors. Welcome back to the poddy. We have a really fun little episode for you today. I really wanted to make something for that time where you're studying for your exams and you're a doctor in training, going from the clinical environment into studying at night. I know that when I was a doctor in training, this was my absolute nemesis. I used to work really hard during the day. I'd work long hours, and then I would come home and I would just be like, how am I going to study tonight? And even if I managed to drag myself to my desk and actually sit there, the studying that I did wasn't necessarily effective study. I might be zoning out. I'd be beating myself up because I wasn't really taking anything in. It was uncomfortable, and it made me disinclined to do it the next day as well. And I'd also be putting lots of pressure on myself, thinking, maybe it's 8 p.m. and maybe I go to bed at 10:30. So therefore I have to do 2.5 hours of all this study, and I have to fill it, and I have to fill every single hour of the day with this study. And I'd be putting unrealistic expectations on myself. That is such a common problem for doctors in training, but I think I might have something to help. By the time you listen to this, the recording will be available and you can click the link below. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Really, really excited about it. What I would have loved when I was a doctor in training, so what I'm going to create for you guys is a positive rampage, I would call it. Just really helpful thoughts that can take us from that energy of having had a clinical day into the evening, but feel really, really good about studying. And it has a few elements. And so Becc and I are going to break this down so that even if you don't listen to that recording, you can still get a lot of value out of today and apply this to your life so that you can get more out of your evenings, whether that's studying or working on a research project, whatever it is that you have in mind that you currently have a lot of trouble getting done.
And I think it's so important even for, I certainly work with a lot of consultants, mainly consultants, and, wanting to use our after clinical work time effectively. It's a lifelong desire, isn't it? We don't want the day to just be like sucked up by the clinical work, which can be so draining. We actually spent a whole episode talking about how draining clinical work can be. Let's reference that in the notes because that resonated with a lot of people. We broke down why clinical work is so draining, and we came up with a lot of we pinpointed a lot of specific things about clinical work that a lot of other jobs don't have, that explain why so many of us experience it such a taxing thing. And so being able to actually utilize that time, there's so many hours, there can be up to 5 hours depending on when your day, even a standard day ends, let alone if you get to have like a half day or something like that. And to be able to use that time will literally change your life. That is not an underestimation. There's so much time. It can also really affect your self-concept if you know that you can be the person in control of what you do or don't do, and when you rest or when you choose to be productive, with neither one or the other being better or worse. But I really like, and I love that you're offering a solution here because, you're obviously targeting it towards in particular, your Dr. Humans who you are trying to help get through these grueling clinical exams. And if you don't know yet, Kristeen actually has all these different courses. She runs a major course on passing your long cases, your clinical exams, but she also offers all these free courses and things as well. So she's delivering all this content, which is an amazing part of the solution. And she also knows that getting yourself to sit down and do the work is a big part of the battle too. But I really do think that this problem is, or this challenge is, it applies to all of us at all levels. And what I really like about Kristeen's solution here is that not only, as we'll talk about, is a lot of the elements that she's included in such a short little package are truly effective and address the way that our brain works and the way that our brain works against us, and helps us to overcome those parts of our mind that is trying to work against us, and to switch those parts of our brain on that really, really help us. And I really like using tools like the one that Kristeen's creating here, just to, lessen the activation energy, direct my mind without me having to draw the map out myself. It's like, we've opened up Google Maps, and instead of you having to, throughout the journey, read the map and keep lifting your head up and down and being like, okay, now we turn this way, now we turn this way. Having a tool like Kristeen's is like, I put in my location on Google Maps and I put in my destination, and now I'm just going to drive with it. So I use these tools all the time, even though I know what thoughts are helpful to me. I know where focusing my attention is helpful, but I would still prefer it when I can have it to just have that automatically fed, passively fed into my mind. So I love this, Kristeen. Thank you so much for creating this. And look, I will probably be using it from you, even though I'm not planning to study for the BPT exams after my day of work.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was thinking about not only is it another thing you have to do, you're like, oh, I could change my mindset into this other mindset, but it's like, oh, no, I've got responsibility for that. Oh my goodness. So it's so beautiful. That GPS thing is such a great analogy. But I think a lot of other things happen during our day in terms of the negative thought stack. Like a lot of things can happen. Like you said, clinical work can be exhausting for so many reasons, but also it can be just emotionally draining to the point where you might not even realize it. You might not even realize that anything particularly happened, but just all day you've been interacting with people and you've been affected by their energy. You've just been affected by things and situations and conversations, and helping people. I often find we absorb a lot of that energy and it's still with you. And so I think that it's actually, apart from the mindset, there's actually a real beauty in allowing yourself to come home and take off that cloak of whatever happened to you in the day. But like you say, this takes the thinking out of it. You'd have no responsibility, just pop this on, and then the hope is that you're going to feel really, really good. I think it'd be super fun to unpack the elements of it. So as I was thinking about this, 3 things came up. So they were appreciation, recognition of yourself, and also connecting with your why. Becc, I'd love to unpack this with you. So first, taking the appreciation component, I guess what I mean by that is, as a doctor, and this sounds terrible, but I come in sometimes and I'm just like, I don't know why I do this. I don't even like this. I hate my life. Gratitude is something that sounds really cliche these days, but I think there is a sort of a coming home to ourselves when we can really just say, oh, actually, these are the things I actually like about being a doctor. This is why I go to work every day. These are the things about my job that I enjoy. These are the things that fill me up, and just have that appreciation, reflecting on, you did something magical today. Like, you were a doctor and you went there and you impacted people's lives.
Yeah, appreciation, gratitude. These, I know that they feel very cliche, but it's often cliches are cliches for a reason, because people have repeated them enough because they work. And if you can understand what's happening in your brain, then you might feel more inclined to use it. And I think what appreciation and gratitude do for me, they don't, if I think about my experience and why I choose to keep using them, it's not because they put me on this great big high and I skip around and I think I'm so fabulous and life's so fantastic and everything is wonderful. But instead, usually the effect that it has on me is it takes me from a negative place to more of a neutral place. And that is so, so powerful. And when you recognize that this happens, especially when we're tired, especially when we're drained, especially when we've collected all these experiences it can be hard and can be negative over the day. But in particular, because we know our brain has a bias towards the negative. We know our brain just wants to keep us safe, which is wonderful. And also because of that, it's looking out for the threats. It's looking out for what's going wrong. It's looking out for what needs to be fixed and what problems are happening. It's looking out for what could get in the way of what you want. It means that we're very good at seeing what didn't go well. We're very good at seeing what we don't have. We're very good at seeing our lack in our lives. And something like appreciation and gratitude, using Kristeen's work to just direct your brain towards appreciation and gratitude, what it does for me is it helps bring me up that emotional spectrum from what can be a very negative place. And I just want to echo what you said, Kristeen, about, how it's not uncommon for us, you could talk about, I'm probably a bad person for saying this, but I think you'll find that not only do for most people, they'll resonate with those thoughts if they have self-awareness, but also, I can say that with a great deal of confidence because, again, it's how our minds work. Otherwise, we just be happy all the time, but instead we're constantly chasing happiness, aren't we? So just when you can recognize that that is often a default of your mind, and without judgment, kind of recognize that that's where you're at, then you'll see how useful something as simple as gratitude and appreciation can be. And in my experience, it usually only takes a couple of sentences. It takes a couple of sentences of me switching into, I appreciate this, I'm grateful for this went well, this could go well in the future, how exciting will this be? You start to get on that thought track, and just like you can kind of go down a negative spiral, the gratitude and the appreciation can send you in that upward spiral even. So that's why I really love that element of appreciation and gratitude as an element of this gorgeous offering.
Yeah. And I guess it sort of ties into the second part, which is recognition. But I think recognition takes it a step further because I think it acknowledges the hard, because you're not necessarily going to say, oh, thanks very much for that really difficult family meeting today. But you can say, I'm really proud of myself the way I showed up in that family meeting today. So kind of spinning it, even if something was quite a negative experience or a really challenging experience, just kind of understanding where the challenge actually fuels you, where there's growth in the challenge, that you can see yourself getting better, that you're recognizing your own development and growth. Because I think that that is one of the most satisfying things in any career. We always want to be growing and developing. So I think understanding where you were as a med student to where you are now, like these exams and studying for exams can make you feel like you're failing at life when really that's not what's happening. You're progressing and you are making progress. But I think recognizing the progress you make is just another technique, another lens to look through that will, like Becc was saying, it will make you feel only a few sentences of that. And again, you've now stacked on another layer of positive things. Is this something that you're using as well, this recognition thing, or do you think that's the same as the appreciation? Do you think it's different?
Oh yeah, I lump it in as the same thing, but honestly, I totally see your perspective here. But I think about a situation where you can look at the situation where you had the hard family meeting, and with that negativity lens, you can be like, that sucked that happened. I wish that meeting didn't happen. And then looking at the same facts of that same situation, you can put on the appreciation lens and you can be like, I showed up there. And that meeting, it was very unpleasant. And I'm getting better because of that. Like, even if you didn't show up in your 5 out of 5 star way that you wanted to show up as your best self, an appreciation lens would say, that meeting showed me where I have to grow, where I want to be. It was another rep that I did. So yeah, I think what you really touched on there that I really like is, we think about appreciation and gratitude as being these really fluffy, quite high, like skip through the flowers. Whereas recognition, you're recognizing that kind of neutrality. You don't have to feel like super, super high or proud, but actually appreciation and gratitude can just be getting you to that neutral place, just be bringing you away from negative.
Yeah. But I think that's such a great point, that we don't have to be elevated or manic. We cannot expect that from ourselves. We cannot expect that transition. But going from a bit of a dulled affect and a brain fatigue and fog and just feeling like yuck, and resisting this evening ahead of you and transitioning into a neutral emotion. Like I can be so productive from neutrality, actually probably more so than if I was completely manic and overly happy. I'm probably not going to sit still. Whereas I think that neutral place is actually something to aim for. I think that's actually really, really helpful advice and really adds something. And then the last part of this, which I think is a really key piece, is connecting to your why. Because again, I feel like as doctors, even when listen, I'm talking about coming home at night to do this, but honestly, going into work some days, I wish I had this on the tannoy. It's just someone telling me, reminding me why I'm going to clinic and why I'm going to be there all day and all the things.
Did you say tannoy?
Is a tannoy not a thing in Australia? Is a tannoy? It's like a speaker that goes through the whole hospital, the whole building. Maybe that's a Scotland thing. I think I learned that from my gran. Maybe that's a Glasgow in the war phrase. But anyway, the tannoy. Thanks, Sadie. Has anyone else heard of a tannoy? So anyway, I would love that playing on the speakers at the hospital as you're going into work, just reminding you, like centering you in your why, because I think it actually is so beautiful. That part of us that knows our why and knows why we became a doctor in the first place. We were bright-eyed, bushy tails, why we went to med school. And that's going to be so unique to you. You know, what is your why is going to be so different from mine, or it'll have its own unique threads weaved in there. So it's a very special thing, is connecting to your why. And I mean, some people, I don't know about you, Becc, I've heard some beautiful stories about why people went into medicine, you know, personal family members who had a disability or a medical illness or something really, you know, there can be real grief and hard stories in there with people's why. But it's so beautiful to really think about the reasons that you started this journey, because when you're in it and you're in the messy middle and you're trying to become fully qualified and do these horrible exams whilst working full time, I shouldn't call them horrible, do these challenging exams whilst working full time, you can feel lost and you don't give any regard to the why. But I think coming back to the why you started medicine, but also the why you're studying for these exams, what do you want to be? Where are you going? Like, what does that mean when you get there, when you become fully qualified? Who will you be and how will that affect you and your family and your patients? So the why is the past, present, and the future why, and it's all tied in here.
Yeah. And to me, connecting with your why, the purpose, the reason why we do this, because this is a key part of one of my core protocols that I want my Dare Darling members to do, which is my award ceremony protocol. And it's a key part. It's a part of any of the goal setting work that I do, connecting with your why, because your why, to me, the reason that we connect with your why is because that's what creates motivation. Motivation, people think it's some like magical, mystical thing, but motivation is just desire. It's a desire to do something. We connect with our why because it creates desire, i.e., it creates motivation. If you ever don't feel motivated, go back to your why. That's what Kristeen's skillfully doing here when she's put these sentiments into this recording. She's helping you create motivation, but she's just doing it in this kind of clever, sneaky way by asking you these questions or directing your attention in this way. So I just, you know, when you have the intrinsic desire to do something, everything's so much easier. And as Kristeen was saying too, sadly, you'd think it would just be something, you know, this stuff that's important to us, that we would just have it with us in the front of our minds all the time. But again, you know from experience, this isn't how our minds work. Even if it is the most important thing to us, even if it is the reason that we're living, even if it's the reason that we've invested all this money and time, or it will save someone's life, just because of how our brains work, it doesn't sit in the front of our minds. We have to put it there. We have to put it in our attention. Just because it's important doesn't mean it will appear in your minds. So recognizing that your mind doesn't work that way, even though it would be wonderful if it did, that would just mean we'd be motivated all the time. But none of us experience that, do we? So again, this is another reason why I love to use tools like this that remind me of the thoughts that are useful to me, you know, that remind me of thoughts that make me feel that gratitude and that appreciation and move me from the negative to the neutral. And then remind me of the thoughts about why I authentically want to do this, to create that motivation for me. And when you can direct your mind in that way, you'll feel better in a lot of cases pretty quickly. And also, if you don't feel better, then you've done a good couple of troubleshooting tips here, like steps here. And then you can say, all right, well, maybe there's something else going on. Maybe I am actually quite tired or depleted. Maybe I do need rest. Maybe I do need some kind of rejuvenation. And actually, we did a whole big, incredible episode on what it really means to not just rest, but to rejuvenate, right? And by that, we mean, resting is kind of being idle, and oftentimes it will lead to us feeling more energy later. And also, we created this episode in particular where we use the concept of deposits and withdrawals, talking about what rejuvenates us and what drains us in terms of our energy. So we have all these different tips and examples on that episode about different things that you can do that might be deposits or withdrawals for you that you didn't recognize before. And a lot of these things will be different for different people, but that's why we offered our different examples and experiences. Go back to that episode. That's episode number 21. If you want to kind of round off this troubleshooting and mastering, maximizing this after your day of work time to make sure you stay in control and you get what you want out of your full day, even though clinical work can be quite tough and quite draining.
Yeah, and I think just to echo that, what we're not saying, like I'm not saying I've made some magical recording that's going to compensate for you not being fed and watered and you haven't slept for about 1,000,000 hours. Like that is not what this is. This is for on a day where you leave work on time and you've got stuff to do and you're in your own way. This should hopefully help you. But what we're not saying is that this is we don't want you to hit the override button. This is not an override button. We also want you to check in with yourself and make sure that you're attending to your basic needs before you would ever go and sit at your desk to do research or study or whatever that is. Yeah, that is just to be really clear.
It really is so often. I think we definitely, I see through my work and my clients recognize through the work that we do that so often the way that we're thinking can have such a profound physical effect on us. So it's really awesome to have, this shortcut as well, where you've offered all these useful thoughts to direct people's minds to appreciation and gratitude and to motivation. And then, you do genuinely find that you will feel better after that. That's my experience. And that's why I use these a lot. And I think as well, when you start to use these tools more, you get better at pinpointing, this is actually a day when resting is the best thing, being idle, doing nothing, or, going and enjoying something else. But when you don't try to direct your mind, when you don't try to move from lack and negativity to appreciation and gratitude, and when you don't connect with your motivation, you can miss out on all those opportunities where you could have actually, been in control of that evening. And when you don't direct your mind, you're potentially leaving a lot on the table here. It's a really good tool that, our minds are the most powerful tool we have in terms of how we feel. And not many people know that they can actually take charge and direct their minds, and that will actually make them feel different.
Yeah, and certainly when I was sitting my exams and doctoral training, I had no idea that I had any kind of authority on this. I just surrendered to whatever emotion I had, and it was not effective, and it was an uphill battle, and I got through it. But I know there is a better way. And yeah, and just with the benefit of hindsight, it's beautiful to go back and hopefully make your journey's a little bit different. So if that sounds like something you need in your life, if you are having that trouble coming in at night, studying after a hard day, and you just feel like you need a little bit of a shift to help sort of kickstart things for you, then be sure to download that recording. It's absolutely free. It's just, there'll be a link below. Becc will set all that up because she's a magician that way. And yeah, and obviously let us know how you go. Let us know if it helps. And I know that actually Beck's working on a similar but slightly different recording, which we'll probably talk about in a future episode as well. So if you're into this, we are here for it. We're making a lot of content like this right now.
My recording is going to be all about directing you to all these useful mindsets that help you be that unshakable doctor that we create with Dear Darling. It's all these different mindsets, these models of the world that I want you to remember. That I mean, it's hard to shift your mindset from the old well practiced things to the new. And so having these recordings like this, especially that you get to repeat, so useful to be able to integrate into your life instead of, so commonly we will watch something or do something once and be like, got it. But actually we need that repeat, don't we?
You know what I'm thinking? Why don't we just put them both below? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? They're both below. Go pick one.
Or both.
They're both below.
All right, our gorgeous friends, let us know if these tools are useful to you. They've certainly been useful to us. We've used all kinds of things like this over the years. And it's really when you start to recognize what works for you, what works for your mind, just take it and run with it. Use it again and again and again and again. We're really grateful that we have a space to be able to share these tips and things that have helped us over the years. Because, if I didn't have podcasts or the internet, then I would have missed out on all these cool little tools and tricks and things that I, nobody in my hospital would have told me, hey, try this.
So we hope you love them. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again next week. Bye.
I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and I've